And we're live! Hi, my name is Sophia Botha and welcome to Botha Rants, the show where we go through all the latest LGBTQ and political news of interest, or at least interest to me. Okay, yes, so Ozma's not with me today. She's off playing D&D. I hope she has fun. The other thing I need to talk about in regards to this show is apologies if anybody was going to stay up late last night to watch me and CHAOSISMEL debate. She bailed on me. I was a bit annoyed because I'd already put up the notification of the for the stream, and suddenly she messages me saying her partner's ill. She can't make it. Here's the thing. Maybe her partner really genuinely is ill. But I've been told she has a habit of bailing on people. And a lot of people say she has a history of lying her ass off. Anyways, we have rescheduled for next week, but I am not so sure that it's going to happen. Something tells me it's not. And this show needs to come first rather than my chats with people, as this is what I prefer doing. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'll certainly have people on this channel, but after I've had 2 trans women this week bail on me, you kind of think, do I really like getting dicked around? No, not really. I mean, with Ari, it's a lot more understandable because, well, she's got a lot on, and obviously she's facing the prospect of jail, and, the thing is, she has to be really careful about what she says. And I mean, if me and Aria do eventually find a time, and get it on, get it on. We're going to. I'm going to do it pre-recorded so that I can go out and make sure there's nothing we say, which is going to get her into any further trouble. Anyways, on with the show, because there's plenty of news about. If you can call this fucking news. So yes, the royal those royals who served in the military will not be attending Prince Philip's funeral in military uniform. To which my response is, yeah, so and fucking what? I don't really care. I mean, why the fuck is this news? Yeah, yeah, right. Bunch of royals going to attend, a funeral for a, pompous, sort of pampered fucking racist tosser. Whoopie fucking do. In fact, because of COVID restrictions, there's only going to be 30 of them. And so it's not going to be like, it was with Princess Di. Actually, I don't remember the Queen Mum's funeral particularly. I remember when she died. I also remember it wasn't that the year also Princess Margaret died. But I don't remember the funerals for either Margaret or Princess the Queen Mum. Yeah. And after record complaints about the BBC's wall-to-wall ass-kissing fucking coverage of Prince Philip's death last Friday, we are told there isn't going to be wall-to-wall coverage tomorrow of Prince Philip's funeral. The TV schedules say otherwise. We'll get to that in a minute. But here's the thing. Right, I actually think Prince Philip's funeral should be pay-per-view. Then we'll see who really gives a shit. Yeah. Yeah. So, right. Well, I have an alternate. I have something alternative to watch, which is the World Snooker Championships. Yeah, go Ronnie, go. Let's hope he retains the title. I'll be watching snooker for the best part of the 2 weeks. I will still be doing the show, of course. But yeah, snooker, one of my favourite sports. So as I was saying, there's going to be. They said there's not going to be wall-to-wall coverage. Well, let's have a look at what's going to be on tomorrow afternoon. Right. Well, we've got the World Snooker Championships. Actually, the World Snooker Championships. You can actually watch it on the BBC website from 10 a.m. the first session. Just in case there's any snooker fans watching. Are there any snooker fans watching? Let us know in the chat. I'm sure it's something I'm going to be talking about for the next 2 weeks. Funny enough, me and Kim Justice, that's my other half, I was on her stream and we really did get into a heated debate about should there be a shot clock during snooker matches. I think there should. She didn't. Anyways, so yeah, back to the subject at hand. Yes, Prince Philip's funeral, right? So they said there was going to be wall-to-wall coverage. Well, ITV and the BBC are both, are going to be showing it. And also before that, I think I saw. There's another fucking tribute on the BBC to Prince Philip. Yeah, none of those are going to be wall-to-wall coverage. Well, it looks like there's going to be a lot of fucking coverage to me. Yeah. Thankfully, though, in the evening there isn't. So I guess that's what I mean. There isn't going to be wall-to-wall coverage, but kind of think there's already too much fucking coverage. I mean, also let's remember that all the fucking news channels, Sky News, BBC News, GB News. Oh well, GB News hasn't launched yet. Actually, I saw that they've signed up Neil Oliver. I used to like Neil Oliver. The long-haired guy who used to present Coast, the historian. But then I found out he's a right-wing reactionary, and well, a right-wing reactionary joins GB News, a right reactionary news channel. Well, there's a fucking surprise. Yeah, because what we really need in this country is yet another right-wing reactionary news outlet to help whip up hate against people such as myself for just being me. I can't, if the Tories don't hate me for fucking being trans, they hate me for being disabled. You know, if they don't want to kill me for being trans, they want to kill me for being disabled. I mean, you know, this is... People actually often ask me why I hate the Tories so much. Well, it's because they're trying to fucking kill me. Anyways. Right. So, now a lot of people say I don't love this country, right? Because I'm always, you know, bashing the establishment. Well, actually, there is much to this country I love. And this is Asaka talking about, you know, racism and patriotism in this country. And she says some interesting things. So, you know, let's have a listen. But before I do, I'll just remind people, Asaka is hated by the far right. Right? Absolutely hated. No one, people like Diane Abbott. Yeah, another, you know, woman of colour who, you know, speaks up for herself. It seems to me that they don't like women who aren't white actually, you know, voicing an opinion. You know, Paul Joseph Watson's always having a go as Sark. I like to call him Pajama Watson because he never leaves his fucking house. You know, it's always sitting in front of that fucking map which doesn't have fucking New Zealand on it. Anyways, so let's have a listen to what Ass has to say.
I always find it funny when people accuse me of hating this country and its culture and its people. Because one, I'm fucking here, ain't I? And two, there is no other country on this earth which could make somebody as obnoxious as me. Only Britain could do it. And I love this country's culture and history. I did English literature, for fuck's sake. You don't do that unless you really like something about it. And the things that I've always loved most about this country are the ways in which diaspora have shaped what it is to be British, what it means to live here. One of my favourite art forms in the entire world is grime. It couldn't have come from anywhere apart from East London. And it itself was a hodgepodge between bits of UK hip hop, UK garage, and of course jungle and dancehall and all these forms of MCing shaped inherently by the colonial and the post-colonial experience. But because it's not draped in a Union Jack, because it's not making excuses for slavery and colonialism, because it's not falling at the feet of Winston Churchill, that's not seen as love for country.
Yeah, that's a really good point she makes. Just because you don't suck Winston Churchill's cock does not mean that you don't love this country. There's a lot I love about this country. I mean, for fuck's sake, my two favourite bands, New Model Army and The Levellers, are both British folky punk rock bands, right? Who both, take their name from the English Civil War. I love, fish and chips. I mean, tonight is fish and chip night. It's Friday night. It's fish and chip night. Often seen as a British dish, though obviously battered fish was introduced to the British, culinary whatever, by us Jewish immigrants. I love British seaside resorts. I know everyone hates them, but there's a sort of kitsch to them I love. There's much. I love the rolling green hills of Britain, especially at sundown. It's fucking beautiful, I love cider, a very British drink, I love cheddar. I like the fact that this country doesn't have a gun culture. Yeah, there's one reason I wouldn't want to live in the United States is because of that gun culture. Plus, also, I think the Brits are a lot more compassionate than many other nations, right? Particularly the United States, okay? I'm not saying we're better. I'm just saying that this is, what I like. I've lived here for most of my life, and I do like this country. I do. But just because, I don't, bow to the royals because I don't suck Winston Churchill's cock does not mean I don't love this country. Okay? And I think Ash has eloquently said that more eloquently than me.
It's love for the wrong bit of the country, right? The brown bit, the black bit, the working class bit, and not for ruling class ideology. Here's the thing about Britain is that it's had a remarkably stable, consistent and resilient ruling class. We have had pretty much the same monarchy with a little hiccup in the Civil War for about 1,200 years. You have a hereditary aristocracy which still owns swathes of this country and has representation in our legislation.
Yeah. Why is it? You see, this is the other thing. Why is it that, we still have hereditary power and political power in this country? Yeah, we like to think that we are a meritocracy. Well, if we are a meritocracy, get rid of the House of Lords and have an elected upper chamber. Okay? Which is accountable to the electorate. Have an elected head of state, which is accountable to the electorate. Yeah? This isn't being anti-British. This is, saying Britain needs to modernise.
Legislature in the form of the House of Lords. Because of that fact, I think we have got this idea of our history being the kind of reorganisation of chairs at the top of the dining club, rather than the heaves of history powered by working class struggle and working class resistance. Because it's not just Henry VIII, Queen Victoria and Winston Churchill, it's the Levellers, the Chartists, British Black Panthers, the Greenwich strike, the miners' strike, all of these things which went into shaping and making the partial democracy that...
It's Peterloo, it's the Tolpuddle Martyrs. It's the trade union movement. It's the Labour Party.
We live in now. That story doesn't get told very often, because if you were to tell it too often, you would start asking uncomfortable questions about that ruling class, which hasn't changed all that much since William the Conqueror. I mean, this idea that all you need are brown faces and high places is just absolutely for the birds. Margaret Thatcher was this country's first female prime minister.
But really, she was just a bloke with a cunt.
Was the daughter of a grocer. Do you think she was good for women? Do you think she was good for working class people, or indeed, lower middle class people? No! So we should have learned this lesson a while ago, that just because somebody shares some of your identity attributes, it doesn't mean that they're going to be organising in your interests. Nobody is more interested in identity politics than black and brown Tories, because they will tell you the story of how their grandparents sailed here in a shoe with nothing but a halfpenny in their pocket, all the while deporting your grandparents. That's the game that they play. What they are a flimsy cover for the ongoing institutional racism of the state, just now with a little bit of diversity bunting at the top. The report into racial and ethnic disparities is a joke. It's the equivalent of getting a panel assembled by the CEOs of BP, Shell and ExxonMobil to write a report into how and why climate change is happening. It was biased from the start.
Well, yeah, because the guy who headed it up is a denier of institutional racism. This is what the Tory government do. They only like to commission reports, which tell them stuff they want to hear. There's no problem here. That's what they want to hear about racism. When we know full well that it's very much otherwise. I mean, fuck's sake. Last year, Dawn Butler, who is a black Labour MP, was stopped and searched by the fucking police. And the only reason I remember seeing the video, and the only reason it seemed to be was because she was black.
Because Munira Mirza was behind it, who has made a career denying the existence of institutional racism and saying that it leads to a culture of grievance. It was chaired by Dr. Tony Sewell, who's been famous for the last decade, not only for saying much of the same thing, but that any enduring racial disparities can be put down to bad parenting and cultural failings, and also Mercy Muroki, who is at the improbably named Centre for Social Justice, a think tank set up by Ian Duncan Smith, no less.
By the way, that clip there, Ian Duncan Smith cheering, that's when George Osborne announced cuts to disability benefits. This is a guy who was cheering on, disabled people possibly starving and dying. Right? Ian Duncan Smith, right, should be, not in Parliament, but in the fucking dock at the Old Bailey, answering, charges of crimes against humanity for what he has done to disabled people.
And you can most often find her in the pages of Rupert Murdoch's papers, reassuring its readership that this whole racism malarkey thing is overblown.
She's an Auntie Thomasia. Well, is she the British version of Candace Owens, huh?
So a government which doesn't like people talking about institutional racism assembled a panel of people who don't think institutional racism exists, and lo and behold, they've produced a report which says no institutional racism to be found here. Even for a report put together in bad faith, I was shocked and surprised that anybody who has a career in academia would be willing to put their name to such a sloppy piece of scholarship. People have been cited as stakeholders who've had no contact with the commission.
I never consented to it. I was never consulted about it. I had nothing to do with it.
There are real laugh out loud moments in the report as well, where they implore us to think about the bright side of slavery, where instead of focusing on the profit and exploitation,
the bright side of that is a mighty sick joke. That really fucking is. That is sick, and not sick as in good. Sick as in sickening. It's fucking sick. It's awful.
Of the slave trade, we look at it as an opportunity.
It's a cruise. Mm-hmm. I've never been on a big boat in the middle of the ocean before. Is it dangerous?
Absolutely not. In fact, we consider our customers precious cargo. So precious, in fact, we keep you safe and secure underneath the boat for the whole ride.
When it comes to the real purpose of the report, which is to explain away enduring racial disparities, they have to provide an alternative explanation. And the one that they go for is that ethnic minorities in this country are haunted by the memory of discrimination. And this haunting memory is...
Oh, right, yeah. Basically, in other words, they've got a chip in their shoulder about it. That's basically what the fucking Tories are saying.
Kept alive by modern day anti-racists who are inculcating a culture of victimhood and grievance. This is saying, don't talk about the Bengal famine. Don't think too hard about the British Empire or of slavery. Don't think about your grandparents or your parents' experience in this country. Don't think too hard about post-colonial struggle for independence, which the British tried to stamp out.
We're going to be extremely firm and extremely mean. If anyone starts any trouble, they'll just get their head blown off. They'll get the message in time,
So the model of Britishness that Tony Sewell and Mercy Muroki would have us embrace, it's a bit like that sketch in Goodness Gracious Me, where you've got the South Asian family trying to be more British than the British. It's a kind of British identity which doesn't even really exist for white British people in this country. It's a complete fiction.
Yeah, I mean, you always get Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage, you pompous racist twat. You always delivering speeches about, Britain being, women cycling to evening song on a warm summer's evening, and warm beer in the local pub, and cricket on the village green, and jam roly-poly for tea. That Britain doesn't fucking exist. It never fucking has. Yeah. The other thing is, I really do get fed up with, particularly Americans always thinking that Britain is like, bowler hats and cups of tea. It's fucking not, right? It's fucking, it's Buckfast and fucking council estates.
And it's all about pledging allegiance to these symbols of domination, exploitation, empire, rather than any kind of truly remodeled, outward-looking Britishness. Now, as for the institutional racism bit, whether it's the police or the healthcare system or our education system or housing, well, the evidence is pointing in one direction there. And within this context, where there's a lack of trust in shared institutions, a lack of trust in shared information, you can polarize and win over an increasingly reactionary and paranoid majority. So that is the point of this report. It's to give racists, in the words of Doreen Lawrence, the green light by handing them a battle standard.
Jeez, the Tories giving a green light to racists. Oh, I'm shocked, considering that, you know, 3/4 of the fucking parliamentary Tory party are a bunch of fucking racists, including Boris Johnson, by the way.
With which to batter people of colour over the head and say, look, racism doesn't exist. And it's also about pumping out discredited, half-baked and shoddy scholarship, which means that all of us are stuck having a stupid argument about whether or not institutional racism exists, rather than the one that we should be having, which is how do we go about addressing it. Controversy was absolutely the point of this report, because you've got to ask yourself, why does the government like culture wars so much? A culture war is a political conflict which takes place on the terrain of identity. It's about who are we, how do we want people to see us, who are you, how do I see you? And it means that it's a fight which is never ever going to be resolved, because no one's identity is ever.
It's also a nice distraction from what's really fucking up this country and the entire globe. Neoliberal capitalism.
Resolved. It can just keep going and going and going, and it turns our attention away from enduring material inequalities or problems with how our institutions are run or who's getting those lucrative government contracts. It is a masterclass in distraction. It's a never-ending vortex in which your energy gets sucked up, and you can't disengage from it, because that is unfortunately where politics is at the moment. But we believe in people power. We don't believe in governments producing reports which give us permission to be angry or permission to identify the social conditions that we live in. So as long as there are people, there's hope. You do have a country of changing demographics, of young people who have no buy-in to the system as it is, and people of colour who are politically and socially literate. That's some pretty good ingredients to work with if you want a people-powered movement.
I'd also say that, you know, a lot of people say to me, what did Jeremy Corbyn achieve? Well, you haven't seen what he's achieved yet. He has inspired a whole generation of young people, right? And that will bear fruit in, say, 10, 20 years from now. Yeah.
The problem with liberal identity politics is that it puts recognition from the state above self-organisation and above collective struggle and above solidarity. So if we want those ingredients to mean anything, in some ways we've got to divest ourselves of the desire to be recognised by those at the top and start recognising each other.
Yeah, I completely agree with what Ash Sarkar is saying there. Okay. So talking about racism, racist Cambridge graduate found with anarchist cookbook showing how to make bombs said he wanted to go on a killing spree. Trial here's. Yeah, so a Cambridge graduate was found with an anarchist cookbook after he posted a number of anti-Semitic, racist and homophobic comments online, a trial has heard. Oliver Bell of Salford brought the manual online, which contained methods of creating handmade bombs. A court heard. I actually have a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook. I don't intend to ever fucking use it, believe me, in that respect. Certainly, I'm not the Molotov cocktail throwing kind of anarchist. I'm definitely not. And this guy's not an anarchist either. He's a fucking racist. This is the second person in, 3 weeks to be facing charges of ostensibly terrorism. If you remember, there was that cop who was a Metropolitan Police officer and a member of National Action, the neo-Nazi group. I think he also had a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook. Seems to be popular with far-right terrorists, doesn't it? Yeah. You know, I mean, we see this sort of stuff in the United States. At least, you know, at least the authorities here are intercepting these, are staging interventions on these people before they can actually do harm. But why do I get the feeling that it won't be long before, we have another far-right terrorist attack? I mean, we've already had, what was it, Darren Osborne driving into that crowd of parishioners coming out of Finsbury Mosque a few years ago. Had that. We've had Thomas Mayer stabbing Joe Cox to death. It seems to me that this is building up, and we are going to see some far right terrorism, particularly as we come out of the pandemic, because of essentially the economic woes this country is going to be feeling. Bill Clinton once said it's the economy, stupid, but he was right. So jurors were told that in a Facebook post, Mr. Bell, I just want to go on a killing spree. A day later, the court heard he posted, hate them Jews, kill them all, kill all the N-words. Yeah, it's always us Jews, isn't it? And the homosexuals. And, they always want to blame us Jews and the fucking homosexuals. And, fucking... Why is it with gay people that... gays and lesbians are some of the most loving people I know, right? Many haven't got a hateful bone in their body. It's people... But it's... so... I honestly don't know. I can't get into the mindset of the far right in some ways. I can understand, like, if you're poor, you're white and poor, and you've got fuck all opportunities, you're lashing out. But this guy, he was at Cambridge. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have a middle class background, doesn't have a working class background. Slip of the tongue there. More likely to have a middle class background, but yeah, it's just, I think this guy had a severe personality defect. After a police raid Mr. Bell's home in Salford, they discovered a number of items, including his Samsung phone, an anarchist cookbook, and books about Adolf Hitler, the court heard. Following an examination of Bell's phone, officers discovered a number of controversial images, including Nazi swastika, as well as conversations with others about race superiority, jurors were told. They discovered conversations with former National Action founder Alex Davies, a well-known, as well as an article about Mr. Bell on the anti-fascist website Hope Not Hate, the court heard. So I'm not going to read this all, but you get the general drift. It says here that, hold on, does it say here he has Asperger's? I mean, that's not an excuse. I actually have Asperger's. I think I just saw that, yeah. In a police interview, officer where he was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, juries heard. Yeah, well, that's not a defence, okay? Sorry, that's not, right? I have Asperger's, but, I don't want to go on a fucking racist killing spree, yeah? I find some stuff hard to understand with interpersonal stuff. Yeah, the court heard that he added homosexuality is perverse and an unnatural behaviour. Who says? Yeah. Oh right, yeah, that thing called the Bible. Oh right, yes, the crusty old book Christians reckon is the word of fucking God, despite the fact that God doesn't exist. So yeah, as I said, I doubt this will be the last person we'll be hearing in the near future has been plotting to go on a racist killing spree. I hate to say this, I think it's going to become more of a regular occurrence, sadly. Right, so if Labour aren't listening to the opinions and wishes of the trans community or of the gypsy, Roma and traveller community, it's now going to be sex workers they don't seem to give a shit, whose opinion they don't give a shit about. This is a segment from Novara Media. basically explaining that a Labour MP has proposed an amendment to the police bill, the same one, which is going to discriminate against gypsies, Roma and traveller people even more, and basically get rid of the right to protest outside Parliament. And the amendment is that paying for sex would become illegal. This is based on something called the Nordic model. Now, I know some people might think, well, paying for sex is already illegal. No, because you can't. I mean, basically, you know, no one knows what happens behind closed doors. I could, you could pay someone to have sex with you, and no one would be none the wiser. It's soliciting, which is illegal, but that's the advertising to pay sex, or basically touting it. So, anyways, let's have a listen on a watch.
Local paper, Labour MP Diana Johnson is on a crusade to make paying for sex a criminal offence. To that end, Diana Johnson attempts to pass a sexual exploitation bill which would criminalise purchasing sex and make it illegal for websites to advertise sex. She has also called for amendments to the police and crime bill which would have the same effect. Now, Johnson, justifying these moves, claims it would have the effect for suppressing demand for sex work and therefore would undermine the profitability.
No, it won't. No, it won't. They don't call prostitution the oldest job in the sorry, it's the oldest profession in the book, do they? For no reason. I mean, and I will say now, look, nobody should be forced into sex work. No woman should be forced into sex work, and I despise any woman anyone who does force any woman into sex work, trafficking, or just some drug pusher or whatever. That's wrong. But there are women who do want to sell their body for in some form of sex work, and not necessarily actually having sex. I'm thinking about women who are into BDSM, dominatrix. I've known a few actually. Not my kind of scene, but people are into it, and sure, they set themselves up as professional dominatrix, and I kind of think, hey, why not make something you find fun into your career? And also this would penalise people who offer sexual services online. In other words, cam girls and stuff. And I know what TERFs are going to say. Oh, this would protect women. Blah 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 blah. Well, why not ask? Actually, there is an interview with a sex worker later in this segment. But why don't you go and ask sex workers? What they want. Okay, they'll say, yeah, but the majority don't want to be doing it. Well, actually, there is possibly an element of truth to that. But I just think that. Some radical feminists want to lecture to other women as to what they should be doing, and that kind of goes against the whole ethos of feminism, doesn't it? Telling women what they ought to be doing. Look, I'm not saying that sex work should be like a career choice at school. Certainly not. Okay, but. What I am saying is people should be free to sell their bodies for sex, and then it's not just women. There's a lot of not just a lot of cis women. There's a lot of trans women who also, to pay for surgery and treatment, do sex work. I've known a few, and also there's a lot of trans, what I guess people would call gay men who sort of, yeah, I did know what I don't like using the word transvestite, but I'm trying to. Basically, there was someone I knew called Giovanni who basically advertised themselves as Susanna, and had sex with other with men as dressed as a woman, right? Transvestite, yeah. I hate using that term, but I can't think of any other term at the moment. But not quite what I would describe as gender fluid. But anyways, it doesn't matter. Now they were originally from Brazil, right? They made a lot of money, and they were able to support their family back in Brazil. Now, I wish they could probably get a career doing something else, but if and being able to support their family, but if they want to do that, then that should be their freedom. Okay, I also remember TERFs. They actually turned against Jeremy Corbyn. I remember a lot of TERFs were supporting Jeremy Corbyn when he first stood as Labour leader. But I remember it was about 4 to 6 months after he became leader, he actually said, sex work should be decriminalised. No. And they really turned against him. Right? Well, it seems to me that this is just fucking... I know that there have been people like Harriet Harman who've been wanting to do this for a long, long time, right? And I remember writing about it like back in 2008, 2009 under the last Labour government. Just saying no. If you're not going to just like anti-abortionists seem to think that if they made abortion illegal, it wouldn't go on. No, it would still go on. It would be backstreet abortions, and people, which would do a lot more harm. Just because you're going to try and make paying for sex illegal, doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
Trafficking and the moves, which would bring Britain in line with the so-called Nordic model, have the support of high-profile MPs such as Dame Margaret Hodge, Harriet Harman and Stella Creasy. So a wide degree of high-profile support there on the Labour benches. However, this drive to criminalise purchasing sex has also provoked opposition, including from sex workers themselves. The organisation Decrim Now advocates to fully decriminalise the sex work industry, and they've released an open letter to MPs arguing that the Nordic model, far from limiting harm from trafficking, would increase the risks faced by sex workers. Signatories of that letter include Amnesty International, the GMB Union, LGBT+ Labour, Momentum, and Labour MPs Nadia Whittam and Zara Sultana.
Well, it's good to hear LGBT+ Labour opposing this. Momentum doesn't surprise me. It's good to hear that there are voices on the left opposing this. And
now, to discuss the Nordic model and the issues raised by this row within Labour, I'm joined by Lydia Caradonna, an organiser with Decrim Now, who organised that open letter. Thank you so much for joining the show this evening. First, I want to start by asking you why your organisation are so opposed to attempts to introduce the Nordic model in Britain, which, just to clarify for the audience, is most importantly to criminalise buying sex, to criminalise being a client of a sex worker, and to criminalise advertising sex work. Why do you think that would be a big problem?
The big takeaway from the Nordic model is that people die. So in just 6 months after it was introduced in France, 10 sex workers have been murdered. The way that the Nordic model works is it criminalises clients, which means that you need to protect clients from the police in order to still be able to see them. It's not like you can just stop seeing clients because of poverty, which is why people are in the sex industry in the first place.
Is the thing. Wouldn't it be just better to make prostitution or sex work legal and be able to give, sex workers protection? Yeah, wouldn't it just be far simpler? Because as I said, you're not going to stop this.
So in order to see clients, you have to see them in more and more isolated places like woodlands. You have to avoid taking things like legal names, which, by
the way, the fact if you're going to have to go to more remote places to see sex workers are going to have to take clients to more remote places, basically is a charter for, those people, those psychopaths who want to do real harm. It's really ridiculous, isn't it?
Sex workers currently used to screen clients and to pass on which clients are bad. You have to protect them from all of that. And also any reduction in demand shifts the power back into the hands of the clients, because sex workers still need to see clients to be able to eat and pay rent, right? So in France, in Northern Ireland, we've seen it become more and more difficult to demand things like condom usage. And people are having to do services that they would not normally do just in order to make ends meet. We also saw in both France and Northern Ireland, there was absolutely no reduction in demand, but there was a huge increase in violence against sex workers.
They don't call prostitution, the oldest profession in the book for no reason. No reduction in demand. Yeah.
So this, coupled with banning advertising platforms that sex workers use to stay independent and not have to rely on things like pimps or managers, is really a violent move against the sex industry, sort of masquerading as rescue. It's not a rescue at all.
I want to bring up a tweet from Diana Johnson. So she responded particularly to Momentum signing this open letter. So Momentum, the left-wing group in the Labour Party. She quote tweeted them and said, "Why is Momentum on the side of pimps, traffickers and organised crime and not women? They sexually exploit women and girls and make huge profits. Sexual exploitation is violence against women, and we need to drive down demand, hold sex buyers accountable and support women exiting the sex trade." Now, how would you respond to that? And her argument there is that if we do the Nordic model, it will make life harder for traffickers and people who exploit women. It will make the industry less profitable. How would you respond to that tweet from Diana Johnson?
I mean, I have some choice words. First of all, are we not women? Why is it that they seem to believe that, we're being raped every day? We don't understand how to consent. If we're such victims, why do they speak to us? So
yeah, it's basically, snooty fucking women who lecturing to other women what they should be doing. And as I said, that goes against the whole ethos of fucking feminism.
Awfully. Why do they not trust us? Why do they not listen when we speak about our own experiences of violence? And first of all, demand has not reduced in Northern Ireland. There is absolutely no empirical evidence that it has reduced trafficking, even in Sweden. In Sweden, the Organisation for Security and Cooperation in Europe saw absolutely no empirical evidence that trafficking had been reduced. The Swedish National Council for Crime Prevention saw no evidence that trafficking had been reduced. There is absolutely no evidence that it happens. And the way that we deal with trafficking in any other sector has not been to criminalise entire sectors. How are we going to have good labour rights at work if our workplaces are continually criminalised? As it stands, I can't go to employment tribunal about my boss, can I? In what world, especially in what world is the Labour Party, which is claiming to stand for workers, making it harder for us to organise, taking the power away from workers, and subjecting us to more and more police involvement when police are historically one of the most violent groups towards us? In what world is that helping us?
Brilliant point. Absolutely brilliant point.
So yeah, I honestly, Diana Johnson, I think it's disgusting. I think you should actually listen to us for once. And I think the way that we are being dismissed as pimps when this is our lives, our bodies, our experiences that you're trying to criminalise is disgusting and misogynistic, honestly.
I suppose the response to some of what you'd say would be to potentially assume or believe that maybe there is a bit of a division within sex work between people who do have autonomy and have made this decision as a choice, and then people who are being exploited, who have been pressured into the industry by traffickers or pimps or whatever. Is that a figment of my imagination, or is that something that actually exists? And while what Diana Johnson is proposing would be of a real negative to someone like you, for other people it might be beneficial. Is there anything to that?
It's far less of a clean divide. So the way you have to look at it is that with choices come power, right? So I, in my life, have had very little choice about doing sex work. And I have a pimp now. So, you know, I would surely fall into this group that needs to be rescued. Whereas some of my friends who are entirely independent, an independence which would be taken away by this law and would push them into the hands of pimps and traffickers, they might be considered in the first group, or this like mythical group of, you know, happy hookers, and apparently happy hookers the only ones advocating for decriminalisation. But actually it's this big continuum where we slide in and out of poverty based on our circumstances. We have more choices and less choices at certain points. And it's really setting up this idea of this like mythical, I guess, pimp figure, a figure which is often actually racialized, especially when it comes to talking about trafficking. It's setting up this enemy, and we just need to tackle the enemy, and then the whole sex industry is solved.
That's another good point. You know, they do seem, Diana Johnson and Harriet Harman and Margaret Hodgson, you seem to think, oh, if we just, you know, ban paying for sex, it'll go away. No. Yeah.
But that's not true. What we need to tackle is poverty. I know so many...
Yeah, again, we need to tackle poverty. We need to tackle neoliberal capitalism.
Sex workers, including myself, who would not be doing sex work if we had easier ways to make ends meet that fit around childcare, that fit around disability, that fit around language barriers, that fit around visas that have limited working hours on. There's all of these other issues that Labour is normally so good on that apparently go out of the window when there's a...
I'm not so sure that these days they are good on things like disability. Sorry, I don't.
Penis involved. In what world? In what world is the answer to any of this making it harder for us to work? It's not. Like, if there are issues in our sector, which I will be the first to say there are, I hate my job, I've experienced so much violence, then the answer has never been to take the power further away from the worker. It has always been to give workers more power. And as part of a Labour movement, we should know that. This shouldn't need to be said.
What Diana Johnson and her supporters are pushing for is to further criminalise the sex industry and sex work. At the moment, it seems to me seems to be a very grey area when it comes to sex work in this country. You're presumably not only opposed to what Diana Johnson is proposing, but you'd like to go further in the other direction, right? I mean, your organisation is called Decrim Now. What would decriminalising sex work mean? How would it be different to what is currently the status quo?
So currently you can buy and sell sex in the UK, that is all fine, but lots of things around it are criminalised, and the things that have been criminalised tend to punish poor people. So you can be arrested and fined for working on the street, which most people don't do because they like the weather, right? They do it because there's no other option. You are completely criminalised for working together for safety. So even if it is just you and a friend working from the same flat, that counts as a brothel because there's two of you. You are both brothel keepers and pimping each other out. So we have to work more and more isolated ways in order to avoid that. You're not...
Which is unsafe.
allowed to have any help at all because of third-party laws. So this is all like terrible, especially if you're in the industry because you're disabled, or even if you share a bank account with a partner who is barely involved in your work, that's being criminalised. And all of the things that these laws are supposedly preventing are still happening. I still work in a brothel. I just have absolutely no rights. All of this stuff has not disappeared. Criminalisation does not make things disappear. Like, we've seen this throughout history. Criminalisation just pushes things further and further underground.
Yeah, look, sex work is a legitimate, profession as far as I'm concerned. Okay, just as legitimate as fucking up the developing world on the fucking stock exchange. Rights for sex workers is what I say. Yeah.
We're not saying that decriminalisation is going to solve all of the problems in the sex industry. That's irrational. what we're saying is if we decriminalise, that puts us on the same footing as other workers to be able to unionise properly, to be able to hold our employers to account, to be able to access services without stigma and judgment. Decriminalisation is the way that we bring power back into the workers, and we get to change the conditions that we're currently working in.
I think one of the arguments from Diana Johnson and that strand of feminism really is to say that the fact that you can purchase sex in society has an effect on the status of all women. And I don't find that argument particularly convincing on the surface, but there is situations. So, for example, in Amsterdam, if you go through the red light district, there are whole streets where the windows are full of women sort of dancing naked. And I can kind of see how maybe that does affect how people in society see women. Do you think that there is a bit of a balance to be struck? And if it were to be decriminalised, we should have sort of maybe regulations so that it doesn't just become like any other sort of consumerist, capitalist industry?
Sexism does not exist because of the sex industry. The sex industry exists because women have been economically disadvantaged, because we've been sexualized throughout history, because there has been a patriarchy.
Yeah, you see, why doesn't Harriet Harman and Margaret Hodge and Diana Johnson look at how to economically improve the lives of women living in poverty? Why don't they look at that instead of penalising them?
Because we've had very few employment options. So, if you found a law, which I don't believe exists, and you could bring the law in and it would get rid of the sex industry entirely, their husbands still wouldn't respect them. The patriarchy would still be a thing. People would still be catcalled. There would still be sexual violence. So this idea that sex workers should be volunteered as collateral damage when we're already facing so much violence is really disgusting. Like, I'm not volunteering myself and my co-workers in order to win some ideological battle about whether or not men should be able to pay for sex, when actually all that's going to do is make our lives worse and be a symbolic victory at best.
When it comes to the division within feminism on this question, it seems a bit, another one of those.
Right. Well, you can go and watch the video yourselves. I don't want to play the whole thing, but so I certainly support sex workers. They should have rights, and if Labour support rights for workers, then they should support rights for sex workers. Right. Yes. Talking of Labour MPs, Liz Kendall. Now, I actually remember, so for those who might have forgotten, Liz Kendall actually stood for the Labour leadership in 2015 against Jeremy. Of course, Jeremy Corbyn won that contest, and I actually remember basically someone set up a Facebook page, Liz Kendall for the Tory leadership, right? And of course, this was in the paper saying, "Oh, this is a court, this is the left wing smearing, Liz Kendall." Turned out it was actually a person in her own campaign who set up the page. Yeah, she is a bit dodgy. I mean, I actually remember a moderate person in the Labour Party who was no fan of Jeremy Corbyn who actually did say to me, "Oh yeah, she is practically a Tory." Anyway, so Liz Kendall's caused some offence by basically insulting supermarket workers. The Leicester West MP Liz Kendall has accused of sneering supermarket staff after saying care workers low pay would mean they would be better off stacking shelves at Morrison's. Well, yeah, care workers do get paid pittance, and they shouldn't. The Shadow Health and Social Care Minister, there's a surprise, a Blairite appointed to the front bench, along with Rachel Reeves and other people who are basically Labour in only but name. They are, fucking Tories. Shadow Health and Social Care Minister excuse me a minute. I've just got a message. I just need to check. Hold on a second. I will be back in one tick. Right, sorry about that. Okay. Anyways, so yeah, she's basically crapping on supermarket workers. Well, this is Liz Kendall. So, you know, why should we be surprised? And why should we be surprised when we have the likes of Liz Kendall on the front bench that Labour's poll rating is getting worse, not better. It's getting worse. Yeah, that's right. Look at this, the latest polling from YouGov. Labour are down 5 points. This is despite the fact that we will recover. We will get to in a mo. The fact that the Tories are as corrupt as fuck. Now, here's the thing, right? You'd think that with all the news of Tory corruption there's been, that Labour would be doing a lot better. But they're not. And as I say, you know, are we surprised with, you know, Keir Starmer's front bench team and with Keir Starmer himself? I mean, he has offered no credible fucking alternative. Now, I just want to compare this with a poll from a few years ago and yet, you know, we still had Blairites. Sorry, I just reconnected. I hope people can still hear me. You know, Labour were ahead in the polls back in 2017. You know, under Jeremy Corbyn, you know, but yet Blairites were still trying to undermine him. And let's remember that if Blairites hadn't run a fucking parallel fucking, you know, election campaign during the 2017 general election, Corbyn could have very well been Prime Minister. Yeah. You know? And now look at Labour. Yeah? You know, you say that, you know, Starmer's better than Corbyn. The polls say otherwise. I know what people are going to say. What about the 2019 general election? As I've explained many times, that was to do with Brexit. Okay? And the person I blame for Labour's asinine fucking Brexit policy was Keir Starmer. He was the one pushing for it. Now, Jeremy Corbyn should have put his foot down, so he does have to take ultimate responsibility. But, I seriously think that if we hadn't had, you know, the enemy within the left, you know, the red Tories, the fucking Blairites, you know, Corbyn would have been Prime Minister. Keir Starmer is never going to be Prime Minister. Okay? He's never going to be. Right? He doesn't offer any fucking. He doesn't offer any policies. He doesn't have a vision of a better tomorrow. He is just fucking useless, right? The job is beyond him, right? He needs to step down, okay? Not just for the sake of the Labour Party, but for the sake of British fucking democracy. You know, that democracy is only as strong as its opposition, and we don't have a functioning fucking opposition at the moment. As I say, there is a scandal going on, okay? For those outside the UK, David Cameron, the previous Tory Prime Minister, has been caught lobbying Rishi Sunak, the Chancellor of Exchequer, on behalf of Greensill Capital. This is to do with NHS contracts. And obviously there's been a lot of controversy regarding the Tories, who the Tories have been awarding NHS contracts to, and well, yeah. This just reminds me of the Tory corruption and sleaze there was back in the 1990s, which contributed to the downfall of the John Major government. And, good that it did, because that fucking government was... that government was just as incompetent as this one. The only difference was there wasn't a fucking global pandemic at the time. Yeah. And as they say, if Labour can't capitalise on all this, they are fucking useless. Yeah? So, I mean, as I said, this is reminiscent of the Tory corruption from the 1990s, the whole cash for questions and all that. So... There's also yet more cronyism and corruption when it comes to Matt Hancock, the Health Secretary, who's already, has already broken the law when it comes to awarding NHS contracts for PPE, that's personal protective equipment, during the pandemic. His excuse is, well, I got the PPE that the NHS needed. Yeah, that's like saying, some dad of a starving family goes and bashes in some OAP and nicks their pension, so that the family, you can feed the family. Well, I got the money. I managed to feed my family. Well, you broke the law in doing so. And the thing is, Keir Starmer refused to ask for the resignation of Matt Hancock. Fucking open goal there for Keir Starmer, and he fucking fucked it up. Anyways, this is the latest bollocks in regards to this.
Hancock accused of cronyism over shares in family firm which has NHS contracts.
Labour has said there are serious questions to answer after it was revealed that Health Secretary Matt Hancock has shares in a family company that has contracts with the NHS. Mr. Hancock declared in the M.P.'s Register of Interests in March of this year that he now owns over 15% of shares in company Topwood Limited, which specialises in secure storage, shredding and scanning of documents. The Health Service Journal, HSJ, reported that the firm, which is owned and run by his sister, won a place on a framework to provide services to the English NHS in 2019, as well as...
Jobs for the boys! Contracts for family and friends. Government ministers have resigned for a lot less than this, and yet Hancock is still there. It doesn't surprise me, because we know that Boris is as corrupt as fuck. This is a guy who basically beat up his girlfriend. And then when, the police were fucking called on him, for doing so, the Tories made out, the Tories fucking, there were fucking Tories like James Cleverly fucking defending him. I remember that from, when was it, 2019? How are people meant to have any faith in politicians when then, their, criminal activity is not being held to account at all? I know Boris Johnson has set up an inquiry into the Green Sill scandal. But here's the thing, right? From what I've read, the remit of that inquiry ain't going to get to the bottom of it because of that remit. Okay? So, yeah. Hancock should go. And Labour should be calling for him to go. This is nice. A lawyer's viral video documenting spurious claims made by Boris Johnson in Parliament has surpassed 10 million views, he has revealed. Yeah, here it is. So we have a watch? I think we'll have a watch. Oh.
CO2 emissions in this country since 2010 on 1990 levels by 42%. 42%. That is an astonishing achievement.
Well, it would be if it were true, but it's just another lie. CO2 emissions fell by 39% between 1990 and 2018, not from 2010 onwards.
Under this Conservative government has grown by 73%.
Another lie. In the period since 2010 and prior to the pandemic, it was about 20%. The 73% he's referring to is for the whole period since 1990, 13 years of which was under Labour governments.
We've restored the nurses' bursary.
Another lie. A maintenance grant for student nurses is not a return of the student nurses' bursary. Thanks to the Conservative government scrapping the nurses' bursary, they still have to pay extortionate tuition fees and still qualify tens of thousands of pounds in debt.
And ensure there will be a free hospital car parking for everybody who attends a hospital.
Just another lie.
Absolute poverty, relative poverty have both declined under this government. And there are hundreds of thousands, I think 400,000 fewer families living in poverty now than there were in 2010.
More lies. The number of people in relative poverty in the UK has increased from 13.6 million in 2010 to 14.5 million in 2019. And as for his claim that 400,000 fewer families are living in poverty, well, it appears he just made that up.
The app would be the icing on the cake. Well, if we can get it to work, it would be a fine thing. But there isn't one anywhere in the world so far.
Another lie. At the time, track and trace apps were being used in France, Germany, Australia, Poland, Latvia, Denmark, Japan, Italy.
He will know that the government is engaged in record investments in the NHS, £34 billion.
Another lie. In real terms, it's a spending increase of just $20.5 billion. The Institute for Fiscal Studies points out that's less than funding used to rise under Labour.
We've absolutely determined to support childcare.
You've just increased child benefit by 35 pence a week.
Yeah. Now, he's doing a better job of challenging fucking Boris Johnson than fucking Keir Starmer is. Also, I like it, you know, when will BBC News catch up? Well, they're too busy sucking Prince Philip's cock at the moment and rehabilitating Prince Andrew, the nonce. Prince Andrew, don't think he'll be turning up to Prince Philip's funeral tomorrow. He's got a prior engagement at a Pizza Express in Woking with an underage teenager. Yeah, he's got a lot of questions to answer, Andrew, and it's not about Prince Philip. Anyways, so... I mean, even when BBC News isn't busy sucking the cocks of the royals, Laura Kuenssberg's busy shagging Boris around the back of number 10 after the daily COVID briefings. I mean, the thing is, the BBC does not report news anymore. Okay, the BBC News is just basically the fucking propaganda mouthpiece for this Tory government, and GB News, and I think there's one other right wing news channel about to launch as well. It's just going to make it worse. The left really need to get a grasp and start to disrupt. That's what I keep saying. They need to find out ways of disrupting, these Tory propaganda machines. Okay? I mean, this video is all very well, and I applaud this guy for what he's done. And I hope that some of those 10 million views take note and, take action. But honestly, I know that some people say, like Jane Fay said, to me a couple of months ago, we've turned to court. No, I don't think we have. I don't. I just think things are getting worse. Right, yeah, so as I reported on Wednesday, the LGBT advisory panel has been disbanded. And one of the former members has been speaking out. Shall we have a listen to what she has to say? So I'm getting a little bit tired of them, so I'll put the reader on.
Former LGBT advisory panel member Jane Ozanne has said she is saddened it is being disbanded, and criticised the government's decision for sending a worrying signal to the queer community. The government's LGBT advisory panel was first instigated by Theresa May's government to advise on issues and policies concerning lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people. However, 3 members quit in March as the Tory administration dragged its heels on a conversion therapy ban. The panel was due to conclude at the end of March, but remains.
Here's the thing, right? The proposals the Tories have put forward for banning conversion therapy, it wouldn't ban conversion therapy. I don't know. Basically, I got a theory that the reason they're doing that is so that basically they can shelve it, yeah, or kick it into the long grass again. You know, obviously they'll lose some LGBTQ votes in doing so. But for LGBTQ people, you know, politically there's a lot of options. I mean, I would suggest the Green Party to them because, to be honest, they are the party which seems to be shouting the loudest at the moment for LGBTQ people. I'm certainly supporting them. Because Labour don't seem to, you know, I mean, I know Keir Starmer said he supports a ban on conversion therapy, but you know, his record on LGBTQ issues is not good. You know, every time Keir Starmer, you know, is asked to take a side when it comes to trans rights, he sits on the fucking fence.
The panel was due to conclude at the end of March, but remaining members were reportedly keen to continue their work, the BBC reported on Tuesday, the 13th of April. Despite this, the Government Equalities Office confirmed that it had been disbanded, with a replacement to be put in place in due course. Jane Ozanne, a gay evangelical Christian who quit the LGBT advisory panel in March because of a hostile environment, told Sky News that the decision to disband the group would have a knock-on effect on the LGBT+ community's trust in the government.
Can I just say that no LGBT person should have any fucking trust in this fucking government. Also, if you remember on Wednesday, I played a clip from the Politics Live show with Tim Montgomery, who basically said, I think he said that he'd reached out to Jane Ozanne because, you know, he was a Christian. Now, Tim Montgomery's a Conservative, right? I'm always curious as to why Conservatives are Christians, because if you read anything, you know, you read about what Jesus preached, Jesus was a fucking socialist. Yeah.
I'm deeply saddened to hear it's been disbanded, Ozanne said during a virtual appearance on Sky News. It was a group of experts in their fields who understood the LGBT+ community in all its forms, and we all wanted to work with the government to help it implement its LGBT action plan, which also seems to have been put on hold. She continued, I think it sends sadly an absolutely worrying signal to the LGBT community that their needs aren't being heard, that their concerns aren't being acted on.
It's more likely that this government is going to be listening to the LGBT Alliance, you know, an anti-LGBTQ hate group. Yeah. I mean, we know that various government ministers have had meetings with the LGBT Alliance, or as they should be called, the anti-LGBT Alliance, because that's what they fucking are. You know, yeah.
She continued, I think it sends sadly an absolutely worrying signal to the LGBT community that their needs aren't being heard, that their concerns aren't being acted on. And we need to look at ways of rebuilding trust and rebuilding bridges of communication when this sadly goes right against that at a very key time. In a letter seen by the BBC, Equalities Minister Liz Truss said she will make an announcement concerning the International LGBT Conference, and will convene a new body that will take international LGBT rights forward. The decision to disband the group has been met with resistance from the LGBT+ community. Trans charity Mermaids said the news was concerning, adding, "A government determined to support and empower LGBTQ+ people does not disband its LGBT advisory panel."
Absolutely, the Mermaids were bang on about that. I saw Mermaids was trending on Twitter yesterday, and I do get triggered every time people attack Mermaids, because it reminds me of my... For those who don't know, Mermaids is a charity which supports trans youth. And I really wished I'd been around him when I was in my youth, because I needed support for being trans, not prevented from coming out as trans as all those adults around me were doing. And, you know, a lot of painful memories for me. You know, it really, you know, the various... You get these people who go on the fucking radio and the fucking television and speak to the news media thinking they're somehow experts on trans youth. No, you're fucking not. You know, how many fucking how many members of the trans youth have you fucking met, you know? You never fucking spoken to me, have you? No. You know, these you know, these people just don't do any fucking research. Anyways, yeah, obviously the signal from this Tory government is they don't really give a shit about LGBTQ people, which is a shame. But hey, you know, as I said, you know, the Tories don't hate me for being don't hate me for being trans. They hate me for being disabled, and if they don't hate me for being disabled, they hate me for being trans. In fact, they hate me for both being trans and disabled. That's, you know, the fact. I don't know why they just don't cut out the middle, cut out the bullshit, take me out to the woods and put a bullet in my fucking back of my head. You know, be a bit more honest with them, because that's what they really want to do. So yeah, DOP leader Eileen Foster gets distressed when she's called homophobic and insists she's got gay friends. Yeah, Eileen. You know, the local racists insist that they're not racist because they've got a black friend. No, doesn't wash. Sorry. DOP leader said she gets very distressed when she's called homophobic, which is truly unfortunate for someone who opposes LGBT plus rights as much as she does. Yeah, well, she does. She does not support LGBT equality. Yeah, and... yeah, fuck her. That's what I say. Yeah. So also now Southern Ireland. That was Northern Ireland. This is Southern Ireland. So you might have seen in the title of this video, J.K. Rowling's been back in the news. Well, not her directly, but Ireland's top broadcaster regulator has said it was not fair for a radio show panellist to call J.K. Rowling a transphobic bigot. Why is it not fair? She is transphobic, thus a bigot. Seems a pretty apt description to me. For the first time in almost 3 years, the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland endorsed a complaint won against the September the 2020 broadcast of The Last Word with Matt Cooper on Today FM. On a segment, a panellist referred to Harry Potter author as a transphobic bigot in the light of her controversial and inaccurate views on trans rights. And let me tell you, her views on trans rights are very inaccurate. She has been fiercely... actually, I wonder, was it Graham Lyman who sent in this complaint by any chance? She has fiercely criticised... she's been fiercely criticised by not only LGBT plus advocates who have called her views dangerous, but even Harry Potter film stars, apart from Ralph Fiennes. But the authority, but you know, I mean, the guy's full of white male privilege, isn't he? But the authority, its compliance committee, issued a judgment on Wednesday, the 14th of April, that upheld a complaint against the panellist, according to RTE, which is the National Irish Broadcaster. Radio show needed to more evidence of J.K. Rowling's transphobia, says a regulator. So what were they meant to do? Read out a whole fucking 3,000 word transphobic diatribe or something? Oh, yeah. Oh, of course, but there's both sides to the argument. Tell me, is there both sides to the argument when it comes to the Holocaust? No. You know, but this is always the thing. People say, well, there's both sides to the argument when it comes to trans rights, you know. You know, that's... Oh, right, so is there both sides to the argument for lynching black people? No, I don't think so. Fuck off. It's bullshit. You know, there should never be, you know, there's no, but, you know, it's bigotry or progress. And bigotry is not one side of the argument. It's not any side of the argument. It should not be entertained at all. The complaint claimed that the 18th of September show, a roundup of all the week's affairs, accused J.K. Rowling of being transphobic without posting any evidence to back this up. Well, there's plenty of evidence to say she is. You know, that's all they needed to do. And that's what I suggest people do. I know some people say, well, where's your fucking evidence? Okay. Alright. Let's just click on here. Channel 4's news alarmingly stands by J.K. Rowling's inaccurate and disturbing assertion that trans women are men. That in itself, her assertion that trans women are men, makes her a transphobic bigot. Okay? If you want more evidence, you know, in other words, you know, we're freaks. That's what she thinks. So, interesting story this. UK's longest serving transgender prisoner to run for Richmond Park MP. The UK's longest serving transgender prisoner is planning on a run for the UK's first trans MP in a local constituency of Richmond Park. Key resident Sarah Jane Baker, it's a nice part of London by the way, is an activist, artist, author and sex worker, and is building a platform to run as an independent candidate against Liberal Democrat incumbent Sarah Olney. Sarah didn't she defeat was it Zach Goldsmith, sorry. Yes, son of Jerry Goldsmith. You know, well, you know, I mean, look, I'm not the biggest fan of the Liberal Democrats, but I prefer, you know, there was a Liberal Democrat MP there than a Tory. I'll be honest there, particularly Zach Goldsmith, who pretends to be like a conservationist, doesn't he? Like a, you know, he pretends to be an environmentalist. You can't be a conservative and be an environmentalist. I'm just telling you that because, you know, one of the reasons why the environment is fucked up is due to fucking capitalism. The ethical capitalism doesn't fucking exist, right? Baker was released from prison in 2019 after serving 30 years of a life sentence in male prisons. Last year she was attacked by 20 people for being transgender in Richmond and has since experienced transphobic abuse on multiple occasions. Baker said, "I want real legal protection for transgender people, not just police arriving to tell you they're sorry these things happen." Yeah, I've had that with the police. If I stick my head above the parapet, people are going to shoot me. Very true. But the only power we've got is the law. We have to make the law work for us. I need to get on the side and affect policy. People need someone who isn't rich and has no skin in the game. Baker currently claims universal credit, and she advocates that people on benefits should be given all the tools to build life. Absolutely. For Baker, gas, electricity and water should be free to those who claim. Her main policies include releasing all pregnant people from prison. So I don't know why it keeps disconnecting and reconnecting. My Wi-Fi signal's fine. Well, anyways, onwards with this. Sounds. What was she in prison for? Does it say? Look, I mean, if she's trying to rebuild her life, you know, then good on her, right? I guess that shouldn't really matter. But 30 years, that tells me it was for something pretty fucking serious. You know, anyways, now I've been meaning to play this for fucking ages. When was this dated? Hold on, let me see. Doesn't it say? Yeah, 3rd of April. So yeah, almost 2 weeks. This is a segment BBC News did on Abigail Thorn, otherwise known as Philosophy Tube, and who I do think is a great credit to the trans community. So let's have a listen to what she has to say.
This is the real me. This is my coming out video. My name is Abigail Thorn. This is real. I'm transgender.
Okay, I'm just gonna clap in front of you.
When you came out, some have said that you immediately catapulted to be one of the most known British trans women. Was that on your mind before pressing upload on the YouTube video?
Yes. Yes, it was. And that's also part of the reason why I decided to keep it to myself for such a long time. I deliberately pretended to be a man in quite a few of my videos. I changed my clothes and I put on a very deep voice, so I hid deliberately for a long time. I remember very clearly waking up one morning years ago thinking, I can't do this for much longer. I think maybe I'll live until I'm 29, maybe not much beyond that. If I have to keep pretending to be a man, I'm gonna die. And now that I'm finally out, I mean, all my loved ones, they say to me, you seem so much happier, you're more relaxed, I'm sleeping better, I have nicer dreams now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like.
And why is that? What is it that's behind feeling so much better now than before?
It's because I'm a woman. And because I don't have to pretend to be a man anymore. That's the first thing. I'm actually a woman. Cool. The second is, some of you are probably trans. My videos are educational, so I'm going to be leaving them up there. And I don't mind, because it means that I can't hide. It means that people will always know that I'm a trans woman. I can't just blend in with every other woman and disappear. But why should I have to? Because I don't think that being trans is anything to be ashamed of.
Were you scared when you came out that it was going to be spun into a negative?
Yes. Terrified. I know what the newspapers in this country say about trans people. And at the end of lockdown 1, I went to see my brother and his family, who I hadn't seen in a long time. And my brother's daughter, my little baby niece, was just getting out of nursery. And I was walking to the nursery with my brother to pick her up. And halfway there, I suddenly stopped. And I said to my brother, I can't go with you because I know what people think about us. And I had to go. And I couldn't see my baby niece. And my brother had to tell her that Auntie Abby loves you, but she can't be here because people might say awful things about her.
What are your thoughts currently on how things are being handled when it comes to LGBT lives?
I don't have the same rights as everyone else. Literally, the morning
No,
that I
we
woke
don't.
up and started my transition,
No.
I lost some of my rights. I can't get married the same way that you can. I can't get the same health care that you can get anymore because I am trans.
And what would you say to those who are watching this who are yet to come out?
I know how hard it is to be in that place. And I would never tell anyone. I would love to stand up here and say, it's wonderful out here. You should absolutely come out. Oh, it's the easiest thing in the world. And I do feel a hell of a lot better since I did. Not only come out to myself, but come out publicly as well. It's like gravity's been turned down by 10%. But I know how hard it is.
I do feel for it. Now, there's another story about Abigail, which we'll get to, but basically, yeah, basically to give it some. Actually, I'll tell you what. We'll get to her the second story about Abigail first. Basically, Abigail has said that because she can't get equal rights and proper healthcare, she is actually thinking about leaving the country. Now, I already know at least 2 trans women who've left the country in the last 6 months. Mainly because of Brexit, but also put the direction this government seems to be taking. Now, both those trans women were fairly wealthy, so easier for them to do so. Now, I don't want trans people to feel like they have to leave this country, okay? And there's a lot of trans people who just can't afford to. I can't, right? Even though, you know, I'm entitled to Israeli citizenship, I can't. I wouldn't be able to afford to do so. It's a really sad state of affairs. I really do suggest that people go and support Abigail. She does some great work, you know, on her channel. You know, I guess I don't know if I should say this, but she's kind of the British version of ContraPoints. And she's friends with ContraPoints. And the one video I do actually suggest people see of Abigail's on her Philosophy Tube channel is the Antifa video, because that is actually really informative about Antifa, the Antifa ideology. Anyways, but maybe what, you know, another reason for trans people to be thinking about leaving this country is the UN pleads with Tory government to ban chilling conversion therapy with no exception. The United Nations has urged the UK government to ban the pseudo-scientific and discredited practice of LGBT plus conversion therapy. In an address to MPs on Thursday, Dr. Almid Shahid, UN special rapporteur on freedom of religion or belief, said conversion therapy has haunting consequences for LGBT. Well, it's basically fucking torture. According to in an address, Shahid insisted that conversion therapy ban would not violate religious freedom. Yeah, you still free to believe whatever you want to believe. You just don't have the right to. You won't have the, you know, be able to basically if you think that LGBTQ people are demonically possessed, to fucking carry out fucking exorcisms on them. And that should be the case. You shouldn't be able to do shit like that. International human rights law is clear that freedom of religion or belief does not limit states' obligation to protect the life, dignity, and healthcare of LGBT plus persons, Shahid told MPs. Yeah, absolutely, I agree with what this guy says. And there shouldn't be any exceptions, but obviously Boris has said there will be exceptions. You still will be, you know, Christians will still be able to pray, to persuade, you know, gay people that they can pray the gay away, that they'll still be able to hold, you know, exorcisms on fucking trans people because they think because they're demonically possessed. Yeah. Right. Right. So, the sponsor of the cruel Arkansas anti-trans bill claims kids are identifying as cats. What? What the fuck? The Republican sponsor of the cruel anti-trans bill in Arkansas has made the inflammable claim that children are now identifying as cats. Mary Bentley is publishing House Bill 1749, a law that would bar public schools, state colleges, and universities from requiring that teachers use students' preferred names and pronouns. Fucking hell! This really is, this is like some white supremacist saying, trying to bring in a law that says that teachers must refer to black people by the N-word. Essentially, it's akin to that. That's just pure out of fucking disgusting bigotry. I mean, what harm is it? What harm is it that people have preferred pronouns? I mean, what the fuck? And as for identifying as cats, that's bullshit. We've had this before, right? Back in this, I think this was 2011. No, 2010. Yeah, I remember. I think I've mentioned this story before. Basically, there was a Republican candidate in Arizona who said that if same-sex marriage became legal, that people would be able to marry their horse. Has that happened? Has that fucking happened? No, it fucking well hasn't. That's bullshit. So, but basically, this story about kids are identifying as cats, it's just it's the same cruddy fucking bullshit. It really is, and it's ridiculous. Yeah, this woman is just. She just wants to be cruel to trans people. She is deliberately being cruel to trans. It's not any protect the children. It's just being nasty. It's just really. It fucking is. Yeah. Sorry, I'm lost for words sometimes, but and this is one of those occasions. Anyway, some good news. The White House isn't ruling out legal action against some of these bills, such as there's been in Arkansas and Tennessee is another place, Mississippi, of course, against. But I mean, Biden isn't ruling out. Well, he needs to take legal action. I mean, so far, generally it's thumbs up for me for Biden when it comes to LGBTQ stuff. But I really do think he needs to get serious in challenging these transphobic bills, in getting lawyers involved. Now, I mean, I always thought that these bills would end up being challenged in the courts. And if the Biden administration can throw their weight behind this, behind doing so, then it wouldn't do any harm. No? I'm really sick and tired of it. It does take it. People don't understand this. It does take its toll on you, right? When you're trans and you have to read day after fucking day, about someone wanting to hate on you or hating on, other trans people. And I know, every trans experience is slightly different from what anyone else is. But we all have, but I know what many trans people, go through. The trauma of gender dysphoria. I know that, right? And, basically, sorry, I am getting a bit upset. Anyways, I am going to leave it there because, it is upsetting. And, but... Really, Biden shouldn't just rule it out. He should get serious. There really does need to be some proactive stuff needed in challenging the state-sponsored discrimination against trans people, which seems to be happening in various US states. If Biden is serious about LGBTQ rights, as he seems to talk about being, it needs to happen. Anyways, if you like this show, please do give it a like. If you want to spread the word about the work I do, then please share this on social media. If you've got any feedback, any suggestions, anything, leave a comment below. Funny enough, Ozma's the only person who to actually leave a comment below my videos. One of my co-hosts. Well, the only co-host at the moment. Yeah, the only person to ever leave a comment. And the most important thing you can do for me is to subscribe. I can't stress this enough. And thank you to all the new subscribers. I'm nearing 200 subscribers. That's really good to see. That the trend does seem to be on the up. But I would like to get above 200. That would, at least by the end of the month. That would really be cool. So please go and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and you don't have to watch every video of mine. Okay. Anyways, I'm off to watch mostly Snooker over the weekend. I hope you'll, find some time to have some fun. And take care of yourselves. Stay safe, and hopefully I will see you on Monday. Peace out.